Hello, everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, the show where we code a complete game live on stream. This is, well, I'll be honest, I don't really completely remember what it is that we're supposed to be doing on this stream. I really don't. It was Wednesday. We had brains working. We were hopping around. We made a thing in the post stream because somebody asked where you could swap your head with something else that was nearby, and that was kind of funny. So to be completely honest with you, I really don't remember what we should be working on right now. What I will say is that there's plenty of things I can think of that we should be working on right now. So rather than try to give a preamble on the stream that's like, here's what we're going to do today, I don't know. So I'm just going to open the code base and see what it is that we're going to work on. I suspect that the most profitable thing to work on would be to start doing some work in the brain code stuff, maybe make some monsters or things like that. We had talked about maybe making a little snake thing that like walks around, or who knows, and so that might be an interesting one as well. So let's go ahead and get started on that, because that's some stuff and things like that and whatever. So that's good. So I think we'll probably do that, playing with the brains and the movement mode stuff to try and get those into a good, more mature area. Today is day 291, so if you would like to follow along at home, you can unpack day 290's source code into a directory, and that is what I am starting with at this very moment in the real world, in life, in the world. So let's go ahead and see where we are. I'm going to put a forecoder here. And build. I gotta remember to update the forecode on this machine. There is a new build. There's a build that's newer than the one that I'm using here. And I gotta switch to it. Okay, so yeah, what we've got at this point is we have the hero is the only person who's really going through real movement code at the moment, and nobody else actually is. And so I guess one thing that I could do just right off the bat is we could make the Monstar, right, who's just a little torso sitting there. We could make the Monstar start moving around. I don't know where he would move around to exactly. But that's okay. It doesn't matter. We'll just have him move around for some reason. I probably shouldn't eat cheesy poofs on the stream because it's probably just too much crunching. But they're so darn delicious, All right. Anyway, so let's see here. What have we got to work with? I'm gonna go into the brain code. And I suppose if we look at what's going on here, really all that's happening, for example, in here is like, I've got a thing that says like, oh yeah, if there's a traversable and I'm planted, like let's hop around. I feel like we could do something where, how it wouldn't take very long. Oh, you know what? I think this is what we were doing too. It looks like we started with the familiar. I was going to say we'll do Monstar, but we don't even have to do Monstar. But I guess, either way, let's get both of those working, Familiar and Monstar, because it looks like we started on that. What I was going to say is, I wonder if we can just go ahead and actually move the Monstar around by just saying, like, okay, if you're a Monstar, and I guess the Monstar, doesn't really have a body or anything. I'm sorry, doesn't really have a head or anything. He just has a body. Then I guess what I could do is say, let's take the Monstar and grab out the parts for the Monstar. And there we go. And the Monstar only has a body. I could say, if the body is valid, because I guess I don't want to do anything if it's not at all at the moment, since there's nothing else. Then I'm going to say, get the closest traversable to wherever I am. Maybe like plus some random delta, right? For now, we'll actually do a real delta, then we'll randomize it later. So we'll just say like, oh yeah, look, one to the right of wherever you are or something. So find the thing that's closest in over that direction. If the movement mode is planted, then we'll go ahead and hold on a second, let me move this down here. Then we'll go ahead and set this stuff up for doing the hop, right? We'll do a transactional occupy. And and that's it. I don't know what that's going to do, to be completely honest with you, but that seems fine. Oh, I've got to have somewhere to put it, I suppose. That traversable has to be stored. So let's go ahead and grab that. There we go. Okay. So, a couple things we need to do here. First of all, I need to actually assign the Monstar to something. Although, actually, wait. That shouldn't have crashed. Should it have? Well, it didn't actually crash, I guess. Oh, no, it did. Get SimSpace traversable. Update and render worlds. Came from and occupying. What did I do here? Oh, because, right. He isn't starting on an actual occupying. So this is the same thing as before. We need to actually start initializing our entities properly. So we do that in the player. You can actually see that happening, right? We get this occupying equals standing on sort of thing. And we need to do something for that in the case of the Monstar, right? And I don't know, I guess we do make a Monstar brain. I didn't realize we did make a Monstar brain. I guess we just did it for completeness. Oh, because we wanted to swap with them, that's why. And we only allowed swapping with things that had brains. You know, I just said I wasn't going to eat another cheesy poof, and I totally did. Alright. So anyway, point being, we need some way of saying that this is where the dude stands. Right? So I put that standing on in there, like so. And it looks like I can, if you create one of these things, I guess I could theoretically make it so that it knows where it is in that case too. I don't know that I want to do that yet, so I'm going to hold off on that for a second, because what we need to do when we move into the code for like creating worlds is we'll probably clean up the notion of how we're like saying where things are placed. So I don't know that I really want to think about that all too hard right now. So I'm just going to say we're going to have standing on gets initialized when you create a Monstar. And so I just have to make sure that we actually do that. Sorry, occupying. So when we create the Monstar, we need some notion of where the Monstar is actually going to be placed. And when we create stuff, we should actually be able to, like, we should be able to remember when we create a Monstar. We want to do that we want to do these things in a way that's a little bit more conducive to how we would actually be doing them. So, for example, when we are creating rooms and stuff, we have the information at that point. When we do like add standard room, we have the information at that point, but we're not actually returning it, right? So what I would like to do is something that works sort of maybe in this context, where inside the standard room, maybe every time we make a standard room, in fact, we could just make them. So when I do like add Monstar and add familiar or whatever, right, I could come in here and just say, you know what, let's bring those out here. And when we're creating these things, we can also say, oh yeah, if this is the time when we want to make one of these guys, when we create the entity, we can use that entity and do the placement on it, right? I don't know if we want to do, yeah, so I guess what we would want to do here is just have a couple of these, right? I'd also say something like this. Oops. So maybe like if it's -2, -2. I'm gonna not add the familiar just yet. So we'll say like, hey, if we're here, and you know what? This is not an else, I guess, now I think about it, because it's gonna stand on that thing. So it's actually an if here. I could do something like this, where I say like, okay, let's remember what entity we're actually going to be doing on here, and we'll make one of these traversables. So when we need to do add Monstar, and we got this standing on here, we can make that actually refer to an entity properly, right? So when we create this entity, we should be able to say like, okay, you know, standing on in this case, the entity, and I don't know what this is going to expect. This is a traversable reference, so I guess this is going to be have to expect an entity packed. I'm not sure what will happen there. let's take a look. So inside the entity code itself, we have a traversable reference. It has an entity reference, so I could just set the entity reference index, right? So this is standing on entity index equals entity ID, and then we would have standing on entity, standing on index equals 0, right? Which it already would be. So I think this is really all we need. And then when we add the Monstar, we can just say like standing on is that thing, I think. Gotta make that a dot. There we go. Now when we add this thing, I guess we've got a world P, and when we add Monstar, I feel like we would just pass the world P through. So I'm just gonna do that, right? And then if I look at add Monstar, and again, like I said, this is stuff that we'll clean up a bunch more later. So it won't be as weird once we kind of have more of a handle on it. So okay, there's add Monstar, and when we add it here, I guess we'd have to put it above this code because it's getting called from there, and familiar would have to be the same. Okay, standard room. Okay. All right, init hit points. Okay. Hit points. That would go right about there. Okay. Shadow Alpha we're gonna have to get rid of eventually, but I guess now's not the time. That's when we do our render pass. Let's put that up here. And then add piece. That stuff should be sort of, that should actually really probably be in the entity code, but you know, we'll put it up here. All right. Okay, so let's see if that works. I'm not sure if it actually will. Let's see what's going on here. I'm gonna double. So before I even start with that, and we do the Monstar stuff, I want to actually go into that brain code and nuke it, and just see if I can get that thing initialized properly. First, so that we know like where the dude is standing, right? All right, so there's Monstar, and you can see that it doesn't appear to be initialized correctly, because what you'll notice is the square underneath him is not lit blue, and if it was initialized correctly, it would have been. So we need to figure out why that's not happening on pack. And so let's do that now. And like I said, we got, you know, and at some point we're gonna have to address this. I just don't want to quite address it now. When we're actually creating worlds, we need to sort of have some idea of how things get created and packed the initial time. And we want to keep that as close as possible to how we pack things at runtime, because we don't want a lot of variability there, but it's just something we haven't thought through yet, so we don't really, you know, I don't really want to jump into it if I don't have to right now. I'd rather have it wait for a little while. All right, so if this is the add Monstar code, you can see that we're setting the standing on here, but I'm assuming that when we call an entity, we're ending up in a situation where for some reason it's not backpacking that properly. Right, because we're setting the index, and in theory, if an index is set, we should be having that pack work. So let me take a look at what happens inside world.cpp when we do a pack of the entity, right? We call is deleted if there's a sim region. If there isn't, so we set the value to 0 if there's no sim region. That looks like the error. I think probably what we want to do is leave the index the same, right? What we would want to do instead is say if sim region, you know, and get hash from ID. Otherwise, leave it what it is. I think that's the more correct interpretation there. Okay, so that was the problem, and you can see now that that's properly occupying a square. So I believe we can now go back to the way the brain code was working and test this out, see if this holds any water here. Off we go. So there we go. Okay. And that dude will just hop right off into the middle of nowhere. Remember, we are not doing... we nullified the collision volume, so there's nothing to stop them from hopping along. So that's exactly what we wanted, and that's great. Now, not a very interesting Monstar, it's true. But, you know, that's okay. We're not really trying to make a particularly interesting Monstar at this point. Inside the code in Handmade World Mode, I would like there to be a effects entropy. I would like there to be a random series that's like game entropy that I can draw from. I don't know that we really need those two things to be separate. But for now, I'm going to say that we're going to keep them separate. So when we initialize effects entropy, we're also going to initialize game entropy. And the other thing, too, is I feel like when we do the series here, when we do random series here, I think we want that to be the game entropy that that's coming from. So we're going to want to do something like this is actually, you know... I guess we could just do series, but say random series equals world mode game entropy. Like so. Okay, and so now once I have a source of entropy there, what I can do is I can make this be a sort of random thing where we just say, hey, whatever the world mode is, that game entropy, I'm going to make it so that we can hop in any direction that we want. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a random bilateral. Right. Just kind of get that so that that delta is meaningful. Now, when we update brains, I don't know that we pass the world mode. It looks like we don't. I don't know what we do with the game state. I guess we get the controllers from that. But I would like that world mode here to be passed. I don't know what it's actually called. What is that called? Game world mode. I don't know why it's called game world mode, to be completely honest with you. Or why we don't know what that is. Is game world mode not defined when we have handmade brain.cpp? What are you talking about? It's right there, dude. When does this get initiated? What? What? What are you saying? Handmade.h. World mode. World mode is there. Brain.h is here, but that's okay because this is brain.cpp. So world mode is right there. Brain.cpp is here. How has it not been defined yet? Does someone want to explain that to me? Someone is going to have to explain that to me. I can tell you that. Let's see here. Did we include this somewhere we should not have? Let's find out. CP.9. Who is actually... I guess that doesn't really help me, though. I really wish the compiler would just tell me who included what. But of course, that's not on the table. Alright, so inside world mode, when I'm calling execute brain, I should have a game world mode, and I do. I'm going to pass it here. And now I have to figure out why I can't actually use that. Like, what's the deal? Yeah, so it thinks that's an undefined type. So somehow, my world mode.h is not actually taking effect. Right? It's just not even happening. And I thought that it was right here, and it is. Right, there's my world mode.h. And so that should be included right here, before handmadebrain.cpp. So I literally have no idea why that wouldn't be included. So let's find out. Is handmade world mode getting included beforehand? Yes, it is. So I must just be missing something. Game world mode. Brain.cpp. Is it game mode world and I'm just, like, reading it backwards? Ha! Amazing. Why did we call the file world mode if it's called mode world? Do we have an explanation for that? Anyone? Anyone? I mean, that just does not make a lot of sense to me. You know what I'm saying? I do not understand why we would have done that. It's just kind of dumb. But, oh well. What are you going to do? Who knows? I'm just going to kick back and eat some cheesy poofs, really. Seems like the best plan. Let's let it be someone else's problem, you know what I'm saying? Because I just can't be bothered. Anyway, so, yeah. This is now, like I said, starting to work basically the way that I want it to work. Which is to say that, you know, now inside of Brain we can just say, oh, we want you to hop from here to here, and then the underlying code just takes care of making sure that that happens, and so that's fine. At this point, it should also be the case that since that's occupying a square, we should not have any more problems with, you know, basically with it running into it, essentially. We should not be allowed to move where it can move, in theory. And it should not be able to move where we are, either. Because, you know, because we did the transactional square stuff. And that does appear to be true, right? Guy's kind of fast. A little too fast. All right. Okay. So there's a Monstar doing whatever that is supposed to be. I have no idea. It's like a Monstar with its head cut off, which is basically exactly what it is, I suppose. And so, yeah. I would say that just for the... Not because there's any reason that we have to do this right now for any particular purpose, but I think when we add room, we should also, like, not add... like... we should not put those ground points down in places where they can't actually be, or we should make sure that trees occupy them, right? And I think probably what we want to do is just have trees occupy them. So we probably want to do something like, you know, again, not really, I don't want to go too far down this route, but I just feel like we might as well not, like, have it be totally broken for right now. When we add a standard room, I'm just going to say, like, you know, just do something stupid like, oh, okay, you know, a standard room. When you add the standard room, there's going to be this thing that's like, okay, you know, how many things are there in the standard room? There's going to be like a traversable reference for the standard room that's like, you know, ground, and there's, you know, however many there are. So there's, what, 17 across, and I guess we'd probably want to access it in what looks like what looks right to us, which is of course the wrong way round, thanks to C's, the way they do their array stuff. But we'll say 17 by 9, and then we'll just in here say, okay, when we make this traversable reference, we'll bank the traversable reference and just say that the standard room that we're creating is going to have all of its points specified hereby. So we'll say like, all right, the offset y, offset x plus 8 and the offset y plus 4. We'll set that standing on. And that way we can have this thing be like, oh yeah, I wanted to do an add Monstar. You know what I could also do? I could do this. And again, this is not good. I mean, this is not what we should do eventually, but for now, I feel like we might as well just hack it in so that we can play with it and not have to care. So I could just say like, oh, okay, you know, room P, I want it at, you know, I don't know, the 3, 4 or something, and it's just the same thing here. Room, ground, 3, 4. Something like that. Oops. And so inside here, we could do this at the end now. And we should still get our little Monstar freaking out, right? And then when I go down and do add standard room down here, I could do it now where I say like, oh, okay, you know, the room gets added here, and then the Monstar, excuse me, gets added at this location, right? What that would allow me to do later is when I'm actually calling add on anything else, like when I do add wall, for example, what I can do is I can actually go in there and take the actual points and have the trees or the walls or whatever we're making occupy those squares. Now, you may ask, and it's a fair question, why wouldn't I just not create a traversable there, rather than creating a traversable and then sticking something on it? And the answer is we may want destructible walls. We may want to be able to move trees by like burning them or moving them or digging them up or who knows what. So I think we want to create traversables everywhere you could ever conceivably stand, and then just put stuff on them. And the only place we wouldn't create traversals are places you can never go, like in the middle of a mountain or something, an undiggable, unaccessible thing that's just the outskirts of the world you can't go into. Then we'd say okay. But other than that, I think we would just always say, yeah, you can stand here, if you can move the stuff that's in the way. So if I was going to do that, when I do an add wall, I want to do the add wall a little bit differently now. And in fact, this abs tile x stuff is not super necessary anymore to a certain extent. This for loop could actually be over the things that are in the room structure. So I could do like array count room p0 for the y, and then, you know, array count room p for the x. And then instead of these abses, I could switch these to just using, you know what, this has got to go right now, we don't have stairs. I could switch these to just using the p value. So I just say like, oh, okay, probably the rest of this stuff still works all right, but the abs tile stuff can come out. Add wall and stuff can be like this. And then the p value can just be world, you know, what is it? World position. P can just be room p, tile x, tile y. Right? So then we just have to make add wall work the same way we were doing before, where we pass in a world position instead of passing in like weird stuff like this. And then we just get rid of that, right? So now in theory, I think we'd have the same thing we had before, hopefully, and we do, so that's good. And so then all I need to do is now say, well, when we add the wall, we'll also pass, like we were doing before, the traversal reference that the wall is standing on. And then, of course, since the wall is standing on it, it's a simple matter of just saying, oh, hey, the entity's occupation is there. Then all we have to do is say, like this, that we pull out the traversal reference. So now, in theory, those trees will occupy those squares, and I believe that no one will be able to hop there. And as you can see, it already seems to have worked nicely in that the Monstar is now confined to that location. Now, you'll note that we still have a little bit of work to do, which is to say you can kind of see that I'm able to pass through anything where, yeah, it's occupying that, but I can pass to something beyond it. And the reason for that is we don't currently have any notion of how far you could hop. So we can just make you hop straight over anything. I could stretch arbitrarily far and hop. Now, I don't know what we want to do about that, right? I don't know what the maximum hop distance should be or anything like that. I suspect we should just set it to be some hop value that is whatever the diamond is that you can hop inside of. But I don't actually know if that's correct. Like, for example, should there be a collision point here that I can't, that my head hits? Is that a thing that should happen? I don't know, right? We have that capability, and certainly I can turn that on. In fact, it's trivial. We already had it, right? In fact, where is it here? So if I turn the collision on for one of these dudes here, where I just say like, oh yeah, we'll still have the hero head have a collision on it, right? Then when I run through here, I've got a collision box, and so I can't, right? I can't go any further. And is that the right solution? I don't know. Because there's two ways that we can choose to approach that problem. I'm not sure about that yet. I have a feeling that I shouldn't bother with that. Like, I have a feeling that what we should probably do is make collision not be for anything other than actually reacting to things, like when things hit each other or whatever. That's my guess, but I don't know. Who knows? All right. So I guess one way to think about that would be that, well, the head is actually a floaty thing, right? You know what? That reminds me. I wanted to go in and see why we get sticking now. Like, we get a lot of sticking. You can see that the head sticks in a nasty way, and I assume that's because when we had monkeyed with the controller code, I think I'd or rather when we composited all that code, I think I didn't really go through and finish making all this stuff work correctly together. So I would like to see what's going on there. So let's take a look. So the parts we have here are, like inside the Brain Hero, one thing we do is we say, all right, if it's analog, you know what I was thinking too? I don't think we need to check for deletion, and the reason for that is that brains run up front. So I think we can avoid doing that. Famous last words. So anyway, when we get out the control stuff here, you can see us doing this, setting up the Con Hero DDP stuff. And then we come through, and this is just was the weird like swap code we tried. Nothing particularly important. Then we do this stuff here where we, oh, you know what? I don't know why we've got change volume and all that stuff on here. Is dsort being used right now? Yeah, it is a little bit. So I'm going to leave dsort in there. But I'm going to get rid of those change volume calls. We then have this add. I don't know that we want that anymore. That's not super necessary. Although I don't really know why. Oh, we deleted it because also because we now have that spacebar was like for swapping stuff. All right, so let's get rid of that. We've got our recenter timer. That is clamping. Does the countdown clamping. And where does the recenter timer actually get used? The recenter timer gets used up here. So yeah, I don't know what that should be doing. Recenter timer equals recenter, and then recenter timer counts down. Recenter timer gets used here, I guess. And I think we don't want to decrement it on the same time it's used, so it's probably something like that. It's probably a little bit better. All right. So I don't know that get closest traversable for the head. I don't know why we're doing that check. That doesn't seem to be all that relevant. That get closest traversable. That seems to be more, well, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, we get the closest P for that. We check to see whether the timer is up or not. And if the timer is not up, then we're going to do, well, timer is up, then we're going to do this stuff, right? Square DDP is less than 0.1. Then we take the DDP equals CP. We do a spring on the head in that, along that axis, whatever the axis is. And no push is determined if the con hero's DDP, right, is less than 0.1. So if you're not pushing in any direction, then no push is active. So if there's no push or the timer is up and this particular direction doesn't have anything happening on it, then off you go, right? So it seems like what's happening here is I don't feel like no push is working properly. So how is that working? If, yeah. I think what I really should do, probably, honestly, is not speculate about this. I would rather just do a debug out here. So I'm just going to say, like, hey, why don't you tell me debug boolean. Don't we have a debug bool? Something like that? There it is. I'm going to say that I just want to see these things. So I can see when no push is getting set. And all that sort of jazz. So let's take a look. So there's timer is up and there's no push. So as you can see, timer is up appears to be working pretty well, right? And honestly, so there's the case happening, the bad case happening. Timer is up was true, which is correct, but no push is false. So we should not be clamping anything while no push is false. Oh, well, we would if the DDP, if that particular element was less than 0.1. So what I should probably also do is do a debug value of DDP2. So I can look at that as well. So there it is. And, you know, so it's -1. That should easily prevent us from applying this stuff here. And you know what? I can make this a little bit more explicit as well. I could do something like, you know, like this. So this will record whether we tried to recenter, and then I can just say like, oh, why don't you tell me each of these so I can see if you are or aren't doing it, right? So, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty obviously like we are not recentering it. It's recentering the two that it should be, and it's not recentering the one that it shouldn't be. So why is my dude slowing down? And does it have to do with the head movement spec junk again, which was the culprit last time we had an unusual error like this? So I should probably go in there and take a look at that. But yeah. In fact, I probably should do that right now. When we do DDP, we initialize it to con hero, then we put it into here, right? I guess I could also see what the head's actual code does in world mode. Let's take a look. So that stuff doesn't get messed with anywhere, right? It's strictly getting called in here. And so let's see what happens inside move entity. So we say if unit max excel vector is true, then we do that sort of unifying. I'm going to say we don't ever want that because we are doing that ourselves, right? And in there, we don't modify the DDP otherwise, but we do modify it by the speed, right? And that seems fine. Speed and drag should still be allowed to take effect. That shouldn't be a problem. Okay, let's take a look. Now that's interesting. So this is basically saying that an entity somehow got going so fast that it was in danger of violating the total speed. Now, how did that happen? Wow, the DDP was 72 per second. Although it's got drag on it, so I'm not sure that that necessarily matters, right? Let me take a look here. And just to be clear, also, I mean, we do clear DDP, right? That's how that works. So DDP should come in at 0. And we should never have anything other than 0. So when we set it here, it should always be set to something pretty reasonable. Similarly, when we're calling it here, if the con hero DDP, how was that acceleration ever plausible? I guess the spring itself would have had to have created that result. Right? And furthermore, I don't really know about any of this. In fact, why do we want any of these things? We really don't want it to modify anything in that code, right? I guess we do want some drag. That's kind of fun. All right. So essentially we're multiplying whatever our acceleration is by 30, and we're adding a certain amount of drag. I don't think that's a good idea because this already has the drag in it, right? And so I think what we would rather do, all of this stuff really wants to be considered together, right? So I think having that sim region movement code be a thing is just kind of dumb. And I think maybe since this has caused so many problems, I'm just going to get rid of it. I don't think it's good anymore. Right, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to say that move spec is just not a thing. Right? And so we'll handle that outside if we want that, if that's something that we want. And we'll deal with drag and those sorts of things in sort of a different way. So take a look at this here. Drag is the only thing in there. All right. So let's see. Come out of this. And I'm going to put this here for the moment, but we're probably going to move this in a second. In fact, I'm probably going to move this now. So this is the... Well, I don't know. Are we going to move it or are we going to leave it? So this should be the only place with errors now, right? Except for the movement code. I don't know why this is jumping to the wrong place. There we go. So this movement spec can go away. And furthermore, that means entities don't have to have a movement spec. And I'm going to if0 all of that out. Goodbye for you as well. Okay. So now the state that we should be in is the hopper should still be able to hop around, right? But I can't move the head because at the moment now we're not actually applying the DDP. So now let's go in here to the part where we are actually doing that, and let's restore some of that code. So in here we'd say like, okay, we've got, you know, we figure out what's going on here in terms of what we think should be happening. This is, again, so you can sort of see why I didn't like the way that was coupled before. Because what's happening here is we have two things going on. There's how much you wanted to move, right? There's the attempted move by the player. That's the thing that should actually be subject to the unit max acceleration, right? But then we've got the recentering force, and the recentering force should have nothing to do with that, right? The recentering force is not something that the player is using to move, that's pulling the player back. And so what we want here, I think, is we want to say, okay, there's the con hero DDP, and the con hero DDP is the thing that's actually going to get that sort of truncation. So when we come through here, we're going to say, all right, let's apply that max acceleration right here. So we'll just say, like, you know, assuming that it's greater than 1, we'll undo it, right? Does that make sense? Is there a DDP regular? No. So this will just become DDP, right? So we create the DDP, we make sure that it's now unit length so that you don't go faster on a diagonal than you do like left and right. You know, that's all we're really trying to do there. And then we can go ahead and do the recentering code. The recentering code can do whatever it wants, so it's allowed to exceed that maximum because it's going to be pulling you back towards a location you should be at. So we're not going to touch that. We're not going to multiply by a movement speed here. Rather, we're going to multiply by a movement speed up here, I think, right? So what we would do is say like DDP times equals movement speed, right? And movement speed was 30. So now we properly create a directional vector. We multiply that directional vector by your movement speed to get the requested amount. We adjust that acceleration by forces that are attempting to do other things to you. And similarly, drag, this is the drag right here, already factored in, right? And so what we would want to do here is probably say the drag is always going to be factored in a little. So if you're not putting that drag in, put this drag in, right? You know what I'm saying? And you can see now why I want this out here is because I feel like for gameplay tuning purposes, especially on the player, but possibly on everything, we're going to want to create these very organic, kind of weird, not particularly mathematically rigorous, played with till it felt right kinds of things. And so, you know, you want to make sure that that is what you can do, and you're not forced through something that's not the proper amount. The proper format, I should say. All right, so finally we'll assign that DDP. Get rid of all this. We do probably want to look into an ODE at some point for the drag coefficients, but we'll leave that for now. And then in here, so this is going to be DDP EE is just going to be equal to the negative drag times the DP. All right, moving along. All right, so now that that's cleaned up a little bit, I can get back to the debugging that I was doing before. Mr. AMD card does not want to download the textures. All right, there we go. All right, so let's see. Where was I? So DDP is equal to Connor DDP. We then take the length of it, and assuming that's greater than 1, we normalize it out to 1. We multiply it by the movement speed, and then we apply the drag. Wait, is that correct? 1 second. Is that too much drag? Drag used to be 8, and it's on the DP, so I feel like that should be okay, but if I actually look at what's going on there, I can't move the head at all when that's on. So what am I missing? Somehow that's applying too much drag, and I don't know what. Oh. Well, no. I don't feel like that should be creating as impossible a move, such an impediment to movement as it is. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm not thinking about that correctly. If we reduce the drag force considerably, can I move? Ah! Yeah. I just realized a few things. First of all, these DDPs, if it's no push, I want to add this force in, not equals it. So there we go. There's that. There we go. And now we seem to have also fixed the bug. So that is good as well. All right, so I think that was most of what I wanted to do there. We have a couple minutes left, like 3 minutes left. So I could go back and get the familiar head float. We could start working on that as well. Let me pull out some of these debug code here. We don't really need it at the moment. And we'll just leave that like this. All right, so in the familiar code, first of all, we have to create one. Which we set ourselves up to do, but did not actually do. So in here it would be like, okay, you know, add a familiar, and the familiar would be, you know, at room p, I don't know, 4.3, ground 4.3. And I'll compile that, and then we just have to make add familiar take the p-value like it was before, position. And now this start is going to be important. It's probably not obvious as to why at first, but this kind of brings up a sort of another point, which is we're going to have to decide at some point how we want to deal with floating objects in terms of occupying squares, right? So we'll see how that goes. So there's the familiar. It's occupying that square, so my body cannot go in there. We still don't haven't decided again like what we want to do with the head precisely, but that'll come a little bit later. But now we want it to the familiar head to be able to move as well. And in order to do that, I think we're going to have a notion here. First of all, we should probably do what I said before, which is the entity flags with like collides and movable and deleted and that stuff. I think movable, I was suggesting, is no longer necessary, and I think that's probably true. So I'm going to go ahead and say that movable is not necessary. I think collides also, I don't really know how necessary that is anymore either. But we'll leave it in for now because we'll have to think about how we want that to be handled, I guess. So let's just continue. I'll remove these. And that should do that, right? Yeah, I mean, in some sense, we should just be able to say, like, if the DDP if it's requested a move, we'll move it for now. Right? Otherwise, we won't try to move it. So yeah, getting a little closer. And tomorrow, I guess we'll get, well, not tomorrow, but Monday we'll get the familiar going. Okay. Time for Q&A. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in to the chat box. Gasto 5. Why are the textures not downloading properly since? Well, if you remember a few episodes back, maybe 40 or 50 episodes back, when we did texture downloads, we tried doing multi-threaded texture downloads, which were supposedly supposed to work, but they don't work reliably. And so eventually we have to go back and stop doing that because it just doesn't work. It usually works on this particular machine, but it does not work. Let me put it this way. It sometimes fails on this machine, but it fails even more frequently on other machines, so it's definitely not an okay thing to be doing, so we won't be doing that in the... We won't be doing any multi-threaded texture downloads in the final game. So... Why the decision to make the game grid-based? That's a design decision, so not really a topic for the stream. There were sirens earlier. Is Man and Tree back at it again? We are not really that close to Man and Tree here, so it's unlikely. However, maybe he's in a different tree this time, in which case it could be closer to here, I suppose. Skullcrack, do you think even after getting a 4-year degree in MIS. Do I know what MIS is? I don't think I know what MIS is. Can you tell me what MIS is? Long Boolean. I guess technically if the gameplay is centered around tiles and facing direction, you wouldn't necessarily need collision detection. So we definitely need the collision detection to remain in, and the reason for that is we do need to know when people hit each other with projectiles and other things like that. So, and like I said, the head moves freely, so basically the game system can't be tile-based, right? It's only the movement of the body pieces that is tile-based, but the rest still has to operate continuously. So... we can't get rid of collision detection. It's got to stay in. We just may never use it for movement, right? But we will use it for other things. Any other programming questions? Tateris, what are the 18 threads that run with the game? So I don't know if we set a max thread count right now, but I can tell you a couple things. First of all, you don't really need to ever ask, assuming that you're running. In order to see those threads, you presumably would know you would be running on. You must be running it on your machine and seeing it. So if you have it, it's pretty easy to just say like, okay. Let me see what threads are being used, right? So here's all our threads. And as you can see, there's really only 2 threads that do anything. And then the rest of the threads are just there for background asset loading. So I can have some of them do some stuff. And you could see, you saw them do something there, right? I don't know if we could find that usage again. But there it is. And you can see that that's just like asking the disk to please get us some art assets. So there's 2 background loading threads, and there's oh, you know what? I lied. This is not 2 threads. This is showing you 1 thread and then usage inside the thread. So this is actually just 3 threads: the thread that does all the game stuff, and the 2 loading threads, right? But that's only if you're not running with the software rasterizer. So if you decide not to use OpenGL and you use the thing where we render everything, then you'll get a lot more. So if I then allow it to start, if I unpause, right, you can see that what actually happens is there's a bunch of work being done on the separate threads, and this is just the rendering, right? And that rendering is going to be a bit slow because this is compiled in debug mode right now, and it actually is significantly faster in release. So you generally don't want to turn the software render on if you're not going to compile in debug mode. But you can see that these are the threads that we're actually using. So here we've still got 1 main game thread which also does render work during the render, which is right here. But then we also did 6 threads of rendering because this is a machine that has like a bunch of cores, right? And then there's still those 2 background loading threads. So that's our actual threads. In addition to those threads, there's usually Windows creates a bunch of crap threads for you, unfortunately, and there's really not much you can do about that. That's just like the way life is. And you can see those threads in here if I do break all. You can see those threads in here. Here's our threads, right? And our main thread. But then it just creates all this other garbage, right? And a lot of it's like, here's the sound playing thread, right? And these are multimedia and sound, like the sound threads. Here's another sound thread, another sound thread. Now, why you need that many threads to play sound, I don't know, considering the fact that we only open 1 output channel for sound. But, you know, somebody thought that was a good idea. And then in here, you know, we're in the kernel. I don't know what these are doing. I suspect they have some kind of something to do with some service, but, you know, without further information, we could try to load symbols from the symbol server, Microsoft symbol server, and I don't know if it'll do that. There was a way to automatically do that, but I don't know. And then we could have a little bit more idea what's going on. This one right here is the AMD driver thread, right? You can see it's an ATI's driver, so that's a thread for their driver. But that's life in Windows. So basically, we asked for these threads so that we could actually use all the cores of the machine, or at least a significant number of the cores. We leave some unused so that Open Broadcasting System has some to use for streaming. So we don't actually open as many as we would normally if you were just running the game by itself. But then, you know, Windows kind of spams us with a ton of threads. So. Does that answer the question? What is going to replace the ground splat system? Just different tile types and seamless textures? Well, I worked out how the game actually is supposed to look, and it is not. It does not want seamless. It's got a specific visual design, and the ground splats are just not appropriate. If that makes sense. Bugagi, why don't you program in a Unix-based OS? We've answered that question a bunch of times, but since there's no other questions, I'll just answer it again. This is why. I am obviously a game programmer, so in order to make a living, you need to program on operating systems where people actually buy games, and there you go. So less than 1% of all games are played on Linux, so it's really not feasible to be, you know, primarily concern yourself with Linux because, you know, you're not really I don't want to say eating your own dog food, but I mean, you want to be the most familiar with the platform that the gamers are actually using. You don't want to, like, you know, be super familiar with Linux and have no idea how Windows works, and then, you know, you ship on Windows and you have all these bugs and you can't fix them, and people are complaining about your game constantly on Steam and all these Steam forums and all that stuff, right? So, you know, if you're programming a game, you got to program on Windows. First and foremost. There's a bunch of other reasons not to use Linux separately, and those have to do with the low quality of tools for game development on that platform. And I realize that's a very difficult thing sometimes for people to grapple with because they maybe are used to web programming where a lot of the tools are better on Linux than they are on Windows, right? And so if you're used to administering web servers or stuff like that, you may be like, well, it's way easier to program on Linux than on Windows or something. But the opposite's true. Like, most game tools are on Windows. Most things work better on Windows for game programming because it's the primary platform that games are programmed on. And so you take a big hit going to Linux as well. Specifically with respect to debugging GPU stuff, which, you know, a web server cares not at all about GPUs, but a game cares a great deal, and so that's a problem. I would prefer that was not the case. I don't really like having to be so closely coupled to Windows, and so I feel like it's not good that what I'm saying is true, but you have to respect the fact that it is, right? You just have to respect the fact that that is the truth of the situation. And so, you know, it's not great. It's not what I would like. I would love it if 50% of games were sold on Linux or something. That would be fantastic, but that's just not the reality of it. So eventually, you know, maybe we can hope that someday it's not the same as it is now, but that is the situation. I'm Destroyeds. Why wouldn't multi-threading work all that well? Complications, limitations. What does that mean? Why wouldn't multi-threading work all that well? Multi-threading does work well? I mean, well, it works well for us. I'm not sure what you mean. Gasto5, how did you manage to make things work in Windows when you started your career, given that MSDN, at least now, is negligible or unreliable or both? Well, I guess what I would say is two things. One is that Microsoft used to have a saner API set, right? Like, Microsoft is so far off the rails API-wise now that it's, yeah. If you came to it now, you'd be like, I have no idea what's going on. You're just like, oh, you required Windows RT compliant thread pool based thing that has to be written in C#, and you're just like, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, it's a nightmare now. That's just, they're off the rails. They're never coming back. What can you do? When I first started Windows programming, that wasn't true. There was just the Win32 API. It's not a great API, but it's sane, right? It's like it's tractable. It's small enough that you could learn it. It was not this giant splatter of garbage that's just smeared all over the walls like some kind of, lunatic asylum where they're trying to, like, keep the poop from sticking to the padded cell or whatever, right? Like it is now. So it was much more sane. And the other thing was MSDN was a lot more accurate and well-maintained at that time as well. It came on a, like, CD or whatever you could put in your computer and read, and it wasn't bad. It was kept pretty up to date. And like I said, there just weren't that many APIs so you could learn them. So I wouldn't say that I did anything special to be able to learn this stuff. I would say that I just was in an environment and at a time when it was tractable to learn how to program Windows. And thankfully, you can still program it the way that I learned even today. You don't have to use all their new crappy crap. Unfortunately, that may not be true forever. One of the horrific things is, Windows or Microsoft seems to be doing their best to try and kill off Windows as a viable gaming platform by doing ridiculous stuff like requiring you to use weird APIs or tying stuff to the Windows Store or God knows what. Maybe they'll succeed and the way that we're programming Windows on Handmade Hero will go away at some point. I just really hope not, because it's at least tractable and you can ship a reasonable product on it, whereas the new stuff they ship is completely unusable as far as I'm concerned. I'm just worried. You said something about the multi-threading being funky. What I was saying is that downloading textures in OpenGL from a different thread than the thread you're rendering on, that's the thing. It's not multi-threading in general. Multi-threading in general is fine. It's OpenGL contexts, having two OpenGL contexts and using them in a multi-threaded way just doesn't seem to work reliably. It's not a big deal. It's not something that's going to affect us hugely in any way, really. That's all. Do you have positive or negative thoughts when it comes to learning and using Python for building applications? I don't really have any thoughts at all. I don't use Python, so. And Metal, you said MSDN came on 2 CDs. Technically, MSDN came on a lot of CDs, I guess. Used to get like this big stack. I don't remember how many of them were the documentation. A lot of them were like the checked build of Windows or whatever that had debug built in and stuff like that. I don't remember how many were actually the CDs, right? Were actually the docs. So. All right, all good. Took a course. Which programming language do you use regularly? Just C and C++. That's it. All right. Thanks everyone for joining me for another episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you as always. If you want to follow along at home, of course, you can pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with a source code if you want to play around with it in the comfort of your own computing environment. We have a forum site you can go to if you want to ask questions. We have a Patreon page you can go to if you want to support the video series. We have a schedule bot who will tweet the schedule at you if you want to know when the series is going to be live. And we have an episode guide for catching up on past episodes. If you want to see when we wrote the software renderer or when we did the debug system or whatever, you can go there and check it out. That's about it. I will be back here next week. Check the schedule bot for times if you are interested in that. Until then, have fun programming this weekend, and I will see you guys on the internet. Take it easy, everyone.